I found the ring in my glove box the same morning she texted me the name she wanted for our baby boy. Funny, right? I was planning a future, and she was writing someone else's name into ours. My hands actually shook when I opened that little velvet box, heart pounding like it did the first time we kissed behind the diner where she used to waitress. I had it all planned. After her next prenatal appointment, I'd take her to that overlook she loved, drop to one knee, and make it official. We were already living together, already expecting. This was just supposed to be the next chapter. And then my phone buzzed. I pulled it out without thinking. A text. From her. I was thinking, what about naming him Evan? It just feels right somehow. I smiled at first. Evan. It was a good name. Strong. Warm. Familiar. But as the seconds passed, something twisted in my gut. A wrongness I couldn't name yet. Because Evan wasn't just a random name. It was his name. And I hadn't thought about him in months. Until now. And then my real hell had just begun. I sat there in my truck, staring at her text until the words blurred. Evan. Not a family name. Not from a baby book we'd gone through together on the couch one night, laughing at the ridiculous ones. No, Evan was the name of a guy from her past. Not just any guy. Her ex. The one she used to tell stories about late at night, when we still stayed up until 2 a.m. just talking. The one who broke her heart but taught her how strong she was. The one her friends always got tight-lipped about when his name slipped into conversation, their smiles strained. I remembered asking her once, months ago, half joking, half curious. If he called you tomorrow, begging for a second chance, would you even hesitate? She'd laughed. Touched my cheek like I was being silly. You're my future, she'd whispered. He's just someone I had to survive. I believed her. God, I wanted to keep believing her now. I thumbed a reply. Evan's nice. But let's keep brainstorming. I pressed send before I could change my mind. Before I could start imagining things that would rip apart the little world I was still trying to build. I tucked the ring deeper into the glove box, started the engine, and drove home with a hollow thudding in my chest that had nothing to do with traffic. Maybe it was innocent. Maybe she'd forgotten. Maybe I was being insecure. I made excuses for her all day. Told myself pregnancy brain was real. She wasn't thinking straight. She probably didn't even connect the dots. It's just a name. People move on. People heal. Right? That night, we lay in bed together, the late September air cooling through the cracked window. She curled up beside me, one hand protectively over her belly, the other finding my fingers under the covers. Did you think about it more? She whispered, half asleep. About Evan? I hesitated. My throat closed. Yeah, I said finally. It's a strong name. She smiled against my shoulder. Feels like he's already ours, you know, she said. I squeezed my eyes shut so tight that stars exploded behind my lids. I held her tighter, trying to smother the unease clawing up my spine. Maybe this was normal. Maybe all expecting couples had doubts. Maybe I just loved her so much it scared me stupid. I didn't sleep that night. I lay there, listening to her breathe, breathing in the lavender lotion she always used. But under it, something sharp, something wrong, like smoke under roses. A smell you only notice when you're already suspicious. A memory flashed. The way she used to hum under her breath when she texted Evan back in the early days of us dating. How she once said, he understood parts of me nobody else ever could. I gritted my teeth against the flood of jealousy and pushed it down, down, down. She chose me. She's carrying my son. We're getting married. I repeated those words like a prayer. In the morning, she made pancakes, messy ones, thick with too much batter, just the way I loved. She danced around the kitchen in her oversized sweatshirt and fuzzy socks, hair a bird's nest, singing off-key to old Taylor Swift songs. The picture of innocence. Of happiness. When she caught me watching her, she laughed. "What's that face?" she teased, bumping her hip into mine. I forced a smile. "Nothing. Just, lucky, I guess." "You're stuck with me," she grinned, flipping a pancake too hard so it landed halfway out of the pan. She swore, laughing, and wiped her hands on a towel. And for a second, a stupid, blissful second, I believed again. Because that's what love does to you. It makes you blind. It makes you want to be blind. Later, as we curled up on the couch, her head on my chest, she started scrolling through baby clothes on her phone, showing me tiny onesies and matching hats. My heart twisted with so much aching, desperate hope that it almost felt like a betrayal to doubt her. Maybe I'd overreacted. Maybe I'd poisoned a good thing with old ghosts. And then, like a nail in the tire of my fragile peace, she said, "Did you know Evan means young warrior? Isn't that beautiful?" I flinched. Just a tiny, involuntary movement. She didn't seem to notice. But inside, a quiet voice was whispering. "You're not imagining this." Still, I smiled. Still, I nodded. Still, I kissed her forehead when she showed me a tiny onesie that said Mommy's Little Hero. And somewhere deep inside me, something cracked open, silent and wide. Because maybe, just maybe, I was starting to realize. This wasn't just a name. This was a confession. And I had no idea what else was in store for me. The first real crack showed up a week later. We were supposed to go to a birthing class together, some Saturday morning thing about breathing techniques and massage. I'd even taken off work for it, something my boss wasn't thrilled about. But I didn't care. I wanted to be there, every step. That's the man I was trying to be for her. For us. She texted me at 7:30 a.m. "Babe, I'm feeling sick. Maybe you can just go without me. Take notes." I frowned at the screen, still in bed, the sunlight creeping across the carpet. Sick. She'd seemed fine last night. Laughing at some dumb movie, stealing bites of my ice cream. I called her. Straight to voicemail. Okay. Maybe she really was sleeping. I threw on jeans, grabbed a notebook, and headed to the class alone. It felt weird, being the only solo dad in a room full of couples. Everyone else was holding hands, giggling awkwardly through the breathing exercises. I sat in the back, scribbling notes like a court stenographer, my chest tight with this wrongness I couldn't name yet. Afterward, I picked up some soup from her favorite cafe, drove home, and let myself in quietly, thinking maybe she was still asleep. The house was off. Too quiet. No TV hum. No dishes in the sink. No lingering smell of morning coffee. I crept upstairs. Her side of the bed was made. Pillows fluffed. The bathroom door was open. Lights off. Dry. I checked my watch. 11:47 a.m. If she was sick, why wasn't she here? I pulled out my phone, texted again. Home if you need anything. Love you. No reply. I sat down on the edge of the couch, soup cooling in its brown paper bag beside me, and stared at the front door like it might unlock itself and explain everything. Around 12:30, her car finally pulled into the driveway. I watched through the window without moving. She hopped out, balancing a small shopping bag in one hand, sunglasses perched on her nose, laughing at something on her phone. Not sick. Not even close. When she opened the door and saw me, she flinched. Just a little. Enough. Hey, babe, she said brightly, kicking off her sandals. I'm so sorry, I just had to get out. The walls were driving me crazy. She walked over and kissed my forehead, the smell of vanilla lotion and something sharper, cologne, trailing behind her. I leaned away slightly. "You feeling better?" I asked, voice careful. "Yeah," she said, "too fast. Fresh air helped." "You went to the class?" I nodded. "Took notes?" "You're the best," she said, squeezing my hand. She didn't ask to see the notes. Didn't mention the class again. Instead, she flopped onto the couch, scrolling on her phone, humming to herself. And there, in that normal, lazy afternoon, the first real seed of doubt rooted itself deep inside me. That night, I couldn't sleep. She was curled up beside me, breathing slow and even, one hand resting on the soft swell of her belly. I stared at the ceiling fan spinning in slow, hypnotic circles, feeling something cold spread through my chest. At 2 a.m., I slipped out of bed. Her purse was hanging from the chair in the hallway, the one she always threw it on without thinking. I hesitated, hand hovering, heart hammering like a guilty teenager's. I didn't want to be that guy. The snooper. The paranoid wreck. But something inside me, something primal, something raw, pushed me forward. The purse smelled faintly of mint gum and that new cologne. My fingers trembled as I opened it. Wallet. Keys. Lip balm. And a receipt. Folded, half crumpled, shoved into a side pocket. I smoothed it out under the dim hallway light. A brunch place. Not the grocery store. Not the pharmacy. A cozy cafe downtown known for date brunches, the kind with bottomless mimosas and heart-shaped waffles. Timestamped 10:42 a.m. 2 entrees. 2 drinks. 2 people. I stood there, feeling the blood drain from my face. She hadn't been sick. She hadn't needed fresh air. She'd been sitting across from someone else, ordering lattes and croissants, laughing like the world hadn't just shifted under my feet. I put everything back exactly how I found it. Slid into bed next to her. Pulled the covers up to my chin. She murmured something in her sleep, rolling toward me, her hand finding my chest. I stared at the dark ceiling. Feeling like I was sinking. Over the next few days, it was like I'd been handed a new set of eyes. Everything looked different. The way she started locking her phone, even around me. The way she lingered in the shower, phone in hand, smiling at some secret. The way she hummed again, not our songs, but something new, unfamiliar. And once, I caught her in the backyard, sitting on the porch swing, talking low into her phone. When she saw me through the glass, she jumped up like she'd been stung. "Work stuff," she called, too loudly. I nodded. I didn't ask. Because now the questions inside me were too big. Too jagged. One night, I caught her drafting a baby announcement on her laptop. I stood behind her quietly, reading over her shoulder. Blue and gold colors. Stars and moon theme. A sweet little poem. At the bottom, in delicate cursive. "Welcome to the world, Evan James." James. Another name. Another thread. Another ghost. Because James was Evan's middle name. Her ex's full name was Evan James Carter. She had chosen to name our son after him, first and middle, and hadn't even realized how loudly she was screaming the truth. I backed away from the couch before she noticed me. Sat down on the stairs, head in my hands, trying to breathe. The truth was unfolding, slow and merciless. And I realized, with the kind of aching clarity that can only come after denial, that love doesn't protect you from betrayal. It just makes the blade sink deeper when it comes. It happened on a Tuesday. Rain slicked the streets in long, trembling lines under the streetlights, the kind of night that smelled like wet asphalt and broken promises. I sat in my truck a block away from the cafe where she said she was meeting her old college friend for dinner. Except I already knew that wasn't true. I'd seen the text pop up on her phone when she wasn't looking. Can't wait to see you tonight. Miss your face. E. E. Of course it was E. I told myself 1,000 things in that truck. That I could turn back. That it wasn't what it looked like. That I was crazy, paranoid, broken from the inside out. But some part of me, the part that had felt the shift before I even had proof, already knew what I was about to see. I waited until she went inside, her coat pulled tight around her belly, hair tucked under a gray beanie. She still looked so small, so familiar. Like the woman I'd fallen in love with at 19 when she tripped in a movie theater aisle and spilled popcorn into my lap. I followed on foot, heart hammering against my ribs so loud I thought it would give me away. Through the wide windows, I saw them. Her. And him. They sat tucked into a corner booth, a single flickering candle between them. Her hand was on the table, palm up, and his fingers were tracing lazy, absent-minded circles over her skin. It wasn't rushed or frantic. It was casual. Like it was normal. Like it belonged. I pressed my hand flat against the cold brick of the building, needing something solid to keep me from slipping into the chaos I could feel boiling under my skin. Inside, she was laughing, that soft, unguarded laugh she used to save just for me. Her whole face lit up when he leaned closer, murmuring something that made her duck her head shyly, tucking a strand of hair behind her ear. She reached out then, without thinking. Her fingers brushed his wrist. A touch so small, so familiar, so intimate it stole the air from my lungs. I watched, frozen, invisible, as he leaned across the table and rested his forehead against hers for a heartbeat. The candle guttered between them. And she closed her eyes. Not pulling away. Not remembering me. Just breathing him in like he was air. I stumbled back from the window, heart roaring in my ears, hands shaking so badly I almost dropped my keys. I didn't go inside. Didn't storm over and shatter the scene like glass. I just stood there. Soaking wet. Frozen to the spot. Because the truth was so much worse than any fight I could start. The truth was. I wasn't even part of her story anymore. I don't remember driving home. I must have, because I found myself sitting on the edge of our bed an hour later, still in my soaked jacket, staring at the walls we painted together last spring, the baby clothes folded neatly in the bassinet by the window. She came home just before midnight. The garage door hummed open. Her footsteps echoed soft against the hardwood. I heard her stop by the mirror in the hallway, fixing her hair maybe, wiping away the last traces of him before stepping back into our life. I didn't move. I didn't speak. She walked in, coat draped over her arm, cheeks pink from the cold, or from laughter that didn't belong to me anymore. When she saw me, she startled. "Hey," she said, voice bright but cracking a little around the edges. "You're up late." I shrugged. "Couldn't sleep," I said. My voice didn't sound like mine. It sounded hollow. Rusted. She crossed the room and kissed the top of my head. Her hair smelled like rain. And beneath it, faint, clinging, undeniable, his cologne. Not mine. Never mine. I inhaled it like a man breathing in smoke from a burning house he couldn't save. "You okay?" she asked, crouching down to meet my eyes. I nodded. She smiled. That same smile she used on him, soft and shy and so beautifully rehearsed. "I missed you," she said, resting her forehead against my knee. For a second, I almost reached out. Almost tangled my fingers in her hair. Almost let myself believe that lie she was offering with both hands. Instead, I said, "Did you have fun tonight?" She froze. Just for a breath. But I felt it. Like the moment before an earthquake when the ground tightens. "Yeah," she said. "It was nice. Good to catch up." I nodded. Her hand slid up my thigh, seeking connection, forgiveness, maybe reassurance that her world wasn't about to split open. I let her touch me. I let her crawl into bed beside me, her belly warm against my back, her hand curling over my heart. I let her whisper goodnight like it meant something. And I lay there, staring into the darkness, wide awake. Counting every single breath. Every single lie. Because the truth was no longer a suspicion. No longer a fear. It was here. Real. Heavy. And sleeping inches away from me. The days after that night blurred together like colors bleeding through cheap fabric. I went to work. Came home. Ate dinner. Nodded at the right times. Laughed when expected. I became a ghost haunting my own life, trapped behind the skin of a man who still wore a ring and still answered to a name that no longer belonged to him. Inside, though, something was crumbling. A slow, quiet collapse. It wasn't even the cheating that broke me the most. It was the way she chose him so easily. Without guilt. Without hesitation. Without even noticing the ruin she was leaving in her wake. One night, about a week later, I stood in the nursery alone. The walls were painted a soft sage green, the crib half assembled, tiny socks folded neatly in a basket by the rocking chair. The mobile she picked spun gently in the draft from the window, stars and moons turning endlessly. I reached into my pocket and pulled out the engagement ring. Still in its box. Still shining like it didn't know it had been rendered useless. I opened it slowly. Let the streetlight outside catch the diamonds, scattering fractured rainbows across the walls. We were supposed to be starting forever. And she was still kissing ghosts. Still writing a dead man's name onto our son's birth certificate. I sank into the rocking chair, the leather creaking under my weight, and held the ring against my chest like a confession. The chair rocked gently, creaking like an old ship adrift at sea. In the silence, something inside me finally snapped. I realized. I couldn't fix this. No grand speech would make her love me again. No desperate promises could rewrite what she'd already rewritten in her heart. She'd made her choice. Long before I ever suspected. Long before she ever whispered Evan's name in the dark. And now it was my turn to make mine. At 3 a.m, I packed a bag. Not for me. For her. One suitcase. One note. I know. And I deserve better. I tucked the ring box inside the pocket of the suitcase, right beside the sonogram photo she had printed and pinned to the fridge, the one with his name written on the back in careful, loving script. I sat on the stairs until the sun began to lighten the sky, feeling hollow, clean, destroyed. And somehow, peaceful. Because endings hurt. But pretending hurts worse. And I was done pretending. She came home that evening carrying 2 paper bags from the organic market downtown. She smelled like lemon soap and a perfume I didn't recognize anymore, sweet, heavy, like trying too hard to cover something up. I watched her through the kitchen doorway, unseen, as she hummed to herself. She set the bags down, unpacking tiny jars of artisanal peanut butter, organic kale, lavender-scented wipes for the baby. Building a life with me like she hadn't already burned it to the ground. I stepped into the room, quiet as breath. She jumped when she saw me. "Hey," she said, "too bright. You scared me." I nodded toward the suitcase by the door. Her eyes flicked to it. Froze. The plastic smile slid off her face like melting wax. "What's that?" she asked, voice thin, breaking at the edges. "You'll need it," I said simply. She opened her mouth. Closed it. Swallowed hard. "I don't," she started. "You don't have to," I said. "I know." The grocery bag in her hand sagged to the floor with a soft crinkle. For a long moment, neither of us moved. The clock ticked behind us, loud in the silence. Outside, the wind rattled the porch swing, the one we built together 2 summers ago when we still thought love was enough. "You're wrong," she whispered finally. "You're confused." Emotional. It's the stress. I shook my head once, slow, final. You named him Evan James, I said. Her face went white. You sit with him in cafes, I continued, each word clean and sharp, like pulling stitches from a wound. You smile at him the way you used to smile at me. Her hands trembled. You wear his scent home. I took a step closer. And when you close your eyes at night, I said, my voice soft, I'm not the one you dream about anymore, am I? Tears welled up in her eyes, catching the kitchen light, but I didn't move toward her. I didn't comfort her. Not this time. Because those tears weren't for me. They were for the life she'd already chosen without me. I never meant, she choked out. You did, I said gently. You meant every choice. The suitcase sat there between us like a third body. Heavy. Waiting. I pulled the engagement ring from my pocket, opened the box with a quiet snap. She gasped, a small, broken sound. I was going to propose after your next appointment, I said. I set the box on the counter between the organic peanut butter and the lavender wipes. I was going to ask you to build a life with me, I continued. Not just because we were having a baby. Because I loved you. Because I believed you. Her hand pressed against her mouth like it could keep the truth from spilling out. I looked at her, really looked, and for the first time, I didn't see the girl I fell in love with. I saw the stranger she'd become. A woman who chose comfort over honesty. A woman who could build a future on a lie. And I realized. I wasn't angry anymore. Just, empty. I'm not going to fight you, I said. I'm not going to beg. I pointed at the suitcase. You'll leave tonight. Her lips parted, but no words came out. You'll find somewhere else to finish building your future, I said. With him. Or without. Doesn't matter. I turned away before I could see the final breaking of her face. Before she could weaponize her sorrow the way she once weaponized her love. And when the door finally clicked shut behind her, suitcase wheels bumping down the porch steps into the fading light, I let out a breath I didn't know I'd been holding for months. The house was silent. The walls were still green. The baby clothes still folded. The stars and moon still turned slowly above the empty crib. But something had changed. Something important. Something permanent. I hadn't just lost her. I had found myself again. The first thing I noticed was the quiet. Not the suffocating kind I'd been drowning in for months, not the silence of a woman scrolling through her phone across the room, thinking of someone else. No, this was different. This was the kind of quiet that left space for breathing again. I made coffee without anyone asking why I forgot to buy oat milk. I sat at the kitchen table, staring at the ring box still sitting between the peanut butter and the unopened jar of lavender wipes. For a long moment, I just looked at it. Then, slowly, I closed the lid, feeling the soft click settle something inside my chest. I didn't throw it away. Not yet. Some things deserve a proper burial. I spent that morning packing up the nursery. Not angrily. Not like a man trying to erase the past. Just, clearing the space. Folding tiny clothes back into boxes. Disassembling the crib, one quiet screw at a time. When I took down the mobile, it spun one last time in my hands, stars and moons twirling lazily under the sunlight filtering through the half-open blinds. I smiled. A real smile. Because this wasn't the end of hope. It was just the end of that story. I called my brother later that afternoon. Told him I was coming to stay with him for a while, just until I figured things out. He didn't ask questions. Just said, "The couch is yours, man. Bring beer." I laughed, really laughed, and it felt strange in my mouth, like using a muscle I'd forgotten I had. I packed 2 duffel bags. Left the rest. The photos on the wall. The life we built. They could stay. They weren't mine anymore. As I locked the front door behind me, I paused. The house was still. The porch swing creaked once in the breeze. A crow called somewhere down the block. And in that moment, standing there with my bags at my feet and a whole unknown future yawning open in front of me, I realized something simple and profound. I didn't fail. I loved. Fully. Fiercely. Stupidly, maybe. But I loved. And when it came time to choose between the lie and myself, I chose me. Somewhere down the line, there'll be a new house. Maybe a new porch swing. Maybe even another tiny sock folded neatly in a basket. I don't know when. I don't know with who. But I know this. Next time, it'll be real. Next time, it'll be built on something that doesn't collapse when the first storm rolls through. Next time, I won't ignore the cracks pretending they're character. And until then, I'm enough. I'm standing. I'm free. And for the first time in a long time, I'm home.